Hello and welcome everyone, and thank you for joining us in today's session about Amazon FSx for NetApp ONTAP for VMware workloads. I am Mahmoud Elhusseiny. I'm a solution architect with AWS. With me today is my colleague Bala Nair, AWS specialist solution architect for VMware Cloud on AWS. Bala, hi, and thank you for joining us on today's session.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
So the main objective of today's session is to understand the business drivers and technical benefits that our customers are getting when they are utilizing the new FSx ONTAP to scale their storage on cloud for their VMware workloads. So this is like the second session that we are doing with the community for VMware Cloud on AWS. We have done a session before to introduce VMware Cloud on AWS, the components, when it can be used, a little bit of architecture, use cases, and these type of discussions. Today, we're just building on top of this. So for the next few slides, it's like a revision for the VMware Cloud on AWS topic. So as we understand, the VMware Cloud is where basically VMware gets infrastructure from AWS in the region of your choice. And once I choose a region, VMware will take some bare metal EC2 from AWS, and VMware will then use these bare metal servers to configure ESXi, vSAN, and NSX, along with vCenter, of course, to manage all of these components. VMware takes roughly 2 hours automation to build all of this for you, to build that cluster for you, or what we call an SDDC, software defined data center. And then it makes it available for you to start using, where you start adding your virtual machines, configuring them, networking and security, and so on. So by the end of the day, you have a vCenter on the cloud that manages the cluster of hosts on AWS Cloud. Now, I think you have seen this in the last presentation that we have done for VMware Cloud. So a customer could have VMware solutions on premises on the left-hand side here. You could be using only ESXi, or you could have ESXi with vSAN and NSX, any of these solutions, or just ESXi. On the right-hand side, you can see here I have my AWS global infrastructure. This would be my regions. And then you go to VMware portal, where you start saying, I want to create a VMware cluster now on the cloud. So this is what we're going to refer to for the rest of the session as VMC, VMware Cloud on AWS. A VMC, the output would be a vCenter with a cluster of hosts, minimum 2 hosts, as we mentioned in the last session, with vSphere, vSAN, and NSX already deployed for you. And with the vCenter that you have on-prem, of course, you can link them together. So you can do things like vMotion and single pane of management to oversee all of the VMware operations. Of course, it integrates with the rest of VMware products like the Verialize suite. Any third-party API can also be integrated with the VMware Cloud as well. And of course, since you are running on the AWS region, also the solution gives you an AWS account if you don't already have one. And this new AWS account, where you can run native AWS services like storage. I want to run a firewall here. I want to run a load balancer, and it integrates with the virtual machines that you are running in the VMware Cloud. Physically, they are in the same region, and logically, we would make the connection for them to work together. Now, of course, today's topic, talking about FSx. So FSx will be one of these features you will deploy in the native AWS services account, and then you have your VMware virtual machines running in the VMC account. So the benefits that we have for our customers to use VMC, as we discussed, it's a solution co-engineered by AWS and VMware. However, the solution is provisioned and managed by VMware. It offers to our customers that operational consistency. They know how to operate with VMware. They are comfortable using the different products around VMware, the ecosystem of VMware products with third-party components. It gives you the workload portability, and I think this is an amazing feature. It means that you don't need to convert your virtual machine to like EC2, for example. It's still VMware format. I can move my virtual machine with vMotion while running from on-prem to AWS or VMware Cloud on AWS and then back to on-prem. It's a two-way door. I can move my virtual machines back and forth Same for storage. I can do storage vMotion also with that. Native integration, and of course, allows you to focus more on modernizing the application since I don't need to worry about conversion. These are what we are seeing today as key business use cases of why customers use VMC. And I think one of the most use cases I'm personally seeing with my interaction with my customers is the ability for them to evacuate their data center as soon as possible. We have many customers globally, and especially with the situation that we have been seeing in the last few days in the news, where we see specific customers need to evacuate their data center as soon as possible, means within hours or even days. They cannot wait weeks or months till you do a conversion or modernization and assessment. They just need to move everything as fast as they can. So for that, definitely using VMC would allow you to do that. Native format, you don't need to change anything. It takes 2 hours to build a cluster and you start migrating. Now, I'm just sharing here a recent study by IDC about, again, business value for customers using VMware Cloud on AWS. And you can see here lots of numbers, but the one I'm going to stop at is the same message, is that fast migration to cloud, rapid migration to cloud. So here you are able to see that in that study, they are able to experience 46%. Customers are experiencing 46% faster cloud migration than the usual path of migration to cloud. Now, I'm just sharing here some of the customer public success stories and observations when they used VMware Cloud on AWS. I'm just going to stop again at one of them, PennyMac, who migrated 500 desktops. This is used for VDI environments serving 4,000 users. They were able to do that in 3 weeks, and they reduced the login time by 10x. That speed of migrating and making an impact and making a good experience for the users, we're talking about days or weeks, is not something you would see outside VMware, because having everything as is, I don't need to worry about changing the format of my virtual machines or how I access logs or how I can restore deleted data. I don't need to worry about that. I have all of this built in. So this is like a quick revision of what we discussed in the last session, little bit of VMC. Now, the next topic I want to talk about, the second piece of the equation for today, is the new service that we offered for FSx or Amazon FSx with that integration with NetApp called FSx for ONTAP. The reason why we created this is that we have data everywhere. You can see the amount of data that everyone is generating, even business users. And that forces companies to start thinking of how can I grow my infrastructure quick enough and fast enough while being cost optimized. So many of our customers were facing these challenges today with their on-premises storage, including NetApp storage. So can you let me know in the chat, 1, 2, and 3, are you seeing any of these challenges in today's on-premises storage? Growing infrastructure cost. Number 2 is lack of agility. It means it takes too much time, like months, till you are able to scale that storage. And it does not allow your business to be fast enough. It takes too much time to bring a new application up. And of course, adding more complexity to manage that on-prem storage. Can you let me know in the chat, 1, 2, 3, which of these challenges are you currently facing? I'm just going to give you 5-10 seconds for you to cast your vote. So I'm saying 1, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Very good. So this is something that at AWS, we were able to see with our customers, as long as NetApp as well, we're able to see these challenges. So customers are starting thinking of, okay, if these are my challenges, now let me consider get that from the cloud. Cloud can fix all of these issues, give the management, give me the speed of the agility, it give me less cost because I only pay for what I consume. So this is what they get with managed cloud storage. So something like S3, something like EFS or FSx, these things were already there and people were able to enjoy using them, right? Now, we already had different flavors of FSx in the AWS console available to all customers globally. And now we have added a new flavor of FSx just launched almost 6 months ago from the date of that session today, which is FSx for NetApp ONTAP. And this product does not mean it's only for existing NetApp customers. I don't need to be an existing NetApp customer to start using it. In today's session, we will introduce this feature. We're going to know why and when we can use it, even if we don't have NetApp already today on premises. So what is the FSx ONTAP new feature is doing? It's a complete NetApp ONTAP file system managed by AWS, available to you within the AWS console, meaning you don't even need to get this from the marketplace. You don't need to get this from anywhere else. It's within the AWS console. If you go under FSx, as we're going to see in the demo, I will be able to get that NetApp ONTAP version as well. The FSx ONTAP allows me to run a large-scale NAS and SAN storage on AWS and fully managed by AWS. We're going to understand what does fully managed here means. It means I don't need to manage controllers. I don't need to update software versions. I don't need to worry about how I'm going to secure that specific software. I don't need to do about that. I'm just getting storage as a service, just like you do with S3 or EBS. This is what you will be getting with the FSx ONTAP. Now, the benefits you will be getting from this is that it's fully managed, co-engineered by AWS and NetApp. You can use the existing NetApp features if you are already a NetApp customer on premises, things like SnapMirror, SnapVault. These functions and these services are still there. I can still use it between on-prem and AWS and backwards, like 2 ways. I can go to cloud and back to on-premises. It's fast and cost-effective because it gives you multiple gigabytes per second as a throughput, hundreds of thousands of IOPS, sub-millisecond latencies. And one of the amazing features of the solution, as we're going to see, is that it does auto tiering between SSD disks, very high throughput disks, and cold storage to save on cost. Before FSx ONTAP, this was not easily available on AWS. I couldn't have NAS and SAN all together with automatic tiering available for me. This is what ONTAP made available. This is why I said I don't need to be a NetApp customer to start using it. If I see value in using the deduplication, compression, compaction, thin provisioning, reducing my storage cost of up to 90%, then you need to try FSx ONTAP. And you don't need to be an ONTAP customer. You don't need any licenses. The cost already covers everything. The cost that comes with FSx ONTAP covers all of these things in the backend. It supports protocols like NFS and SMB for file and iSCSI for SAN operations. It's accessible from any machine, Linux, Windows, Mac OS, any operating system. You can access it from any compute service within the AWS, like EC2, containers, even if you have VDI like workspaces, and of course the VMware Cloud. And you can also access it from on-premises. So on-premises can also access that shared storage that I have on the cloud. From a security point of view, encryption is there at rest and in transit. You can integrate it with third-party softwares for antivirus and auditing. You integrate it with Active Directory, and of course, it's compliant. Now, because it's a managed service by AWS, all of these things you don't need to do, unlike on-premises. I don't need to worry about capacity planning because this is cloud. I only use what I need and when I need it. I don't need to forecast how much I need in the next 3 years. It makes the procurement process almost much easier, much quicker. I don't need to worry about that. Installing hardware, configuring hardware, upgrading, decommissioning, failure management, cabling, all of these things are gone because it's a managed service. From a software point of view, I don't need to worry about updating firmwares or changing my controllers or configuring it or licensing. All of these things are done for you. You are just consuming storage, whether it's SMB and NFS, or you just want it to be iSCSI. Our customers are using this to start their migration journey, extend their existing workloads on-prem to AWS, simplify business, and at the same time allows existing users of NetApp to use that ONTAP capability in a self-service approach. Now, let's do a little bit deep dive. I know you have more questions to know more about that service. Let's deep dive. How can I access it? How can I configure it? From AWS, the usual approach. You can use the GUI, CLI, or API and SDK for it. Or if you're already a NetApp customer, you could also use the NetApp Cloud Manager or ONTAP CLI or API to also launch a new file system on FSx ONTAP. Now, what will happen in the back end? The system, of course, is highly available by default. It's multi-easy today. And you would see two availability zones that the system was using. And with the FSx ONTAP, the system is basically creating a primary, secondary, like a controller setup, similar to what you were doing on premises if you're already a NetApp customer. And of course, between the primary and secondary, each has their own storage connected to it. And you have synchronous mirroring happening between the primary and the standby server. So eventually, the entire solution will look to you like one virtual storage pool where I can start accessing my data, NAS or SAN. And as I mentioned, I can do that from within the AWS cloud, same region, different AWS region, or even if I'm on premises using VPN or Direct Connect. All of these methods are available to access the FSx ONTAP. If any failure is to happen to the active controller or to one of my availability zones, automatically the system in the back end fail over like the management IPs and all the data connectors to the standby connector. So this automatically happens, that automatic failover in the back end. So you have that resiliency, that high availability built in automatically. Any failure in a disk automatically is being replaced in the back end. Automatically the data will be copied from the other side to that new built disk. From an accessibility point of view, because it is eventually an AWS service, automatically you can access this data from any compute service you would use, from any operating system on AWS, on another VPC or another region, and of course on premises as we explained. And again, because it is an AWS service, of course, it's part of our ecosystem. It integrates with other services available in AWS. Like for security, we can use IAM and KMS, for example, KMS for encryption. I could be using CloudWatch and CloudTrail for monitoring and logging. I could be using data sync or backup to backup the data that I have on FSx ONTAP. So all of the other services that you're used to from AWS, I can still use it with FSx ONTAP. Now, we talked about the performance and the scale with hundreds of thousands of IOPS available per file system, multiple gigabytes per second throughput per file system, and sub-millisecond latency. So as you can see, any application would be able to utilize this. Now, one of the amazing features that I mentioned earlier is the auto tiering capability, that if you enable, it allows you to save a huge amount of cost on AWS that you couldn't have done before. Let me tell you how. When you configure the FSx file system, you would need to have two different tiers. Primary tier, or what you call like hot tier. This will be eventually using SSDs. And as we mentioned, it's multi-easy. The cold tier or the capacity tier is elastic, means I don't have to specify specific size in the beginning. And it's also multi-easy and it can scale to up to petabyte, virtually unlimited capacity. Can anyone guess on the chat, which service do we have on AWS is elastic, multi-easy, scalable to virtually unlimited capacity, and it's cost optimized for the less accessed files? Can you guess what storage service would that be that they are using in the back end? So if this is like SSD, if this is like EBS, what would be the cold storage be built on? Yep, exactly. It's based on S3. So you don't configure S3. You're not configuring block storage here. This is what ONTAP is doing on your behalf in the backend, right? They have hot, they have cold. And if you enable automatic tiering and there are different settings available, the system will move the data between cold and hot based on access pattern. So how hot is your data? If it's hot, it moves to the EBS. You're paying for the EBS. If it's no longer being used, it moves it to automatically S3 to save your cost. You no longer need to keep it on the hot storage. And we are estimating this from other customers and what we are seeing in the market to about 20%, 80%, 20% hot, 80% cold data. So imagine if this 80% was on SSD, how much more you would have paid to keep that on SSD. You no longer need it to be hot, right? And when you need it, the system will bring it back to the SSD automatically in the back end. You don't have to manually do anything. So this intelligent data movement, I think, is an amazing feature that we have with the FSx ONTAP. Now, from an access control point of view, of course, it integrates with Active Directory for user authentication. It supports auditing, access logging, integrating with antivirus vendors, monitoring with CloudTrail, all of these things we mentioned before. For backup, you have the FSx backup built in, which is allowing you to do incremental crash consistent backups. You can also do cross-region replication. So if I have a specific compliance and I'm already running on cloud, I could use FSx ONTAP to just mirror my data to another region natively. I don't have to manually do CLI commands or any of this to do that cross-region replication for FSx ONTAP. Now, how or when I would use it? Now, as I said, if you are already a NetApp customer today, you can just do the snap mirror or snap vault from your primary on-prem to AWS, or you could do this hybrid approach. So I could have my volume running on the cloud and I just want to cache it on-prem or cache it on the cloud. Both options are available. I can do cross-region. I can do also flex cache between regions. So it means that a volume is running in one region. I'm just caching the volume in another region. So my data would be able to have low latency access whenever my users are. Now, these are all very interesting options, but what would it mean for VMware workloads? I have lots of VMware workloads currently running today on premises. I could be exploring using VMware Cloud on AWS, right? Now, where I would run VMware on the cloud. AWS is VMware's preferred public cloud choice. If you want to run vSphere on cloud, VMware will tell you go to AWS. Use VMware Cloud on AWS. Now, when you try to build the cluster size, how many physical hosts I will need from AWS to do this, from the previous session, we were talking about the two options available, the i3 Metal and the i3 EN. The i3 Metal, you can see here the CPU, RAM, and storage that's available. And the i3 EN has more resources from CPU, RAM, and disk space. Now, when you size your cluster, what you will find is that many customers would say, to capture all of my VMs, I have 100 VMs, I have 500 VMs. I need a certain number of hosts on the VMC. I need 10 hosts. Not because I need all the CPU, not because I need all the RAM, but the storage. I need all the storage to accommodate all of my VMs. So this is why I'm getting 10 hosts from VMC. Now, before this feature with FSx ONTAP, there is no other solution. We need to accommodate more hosts in the cluster to cover the storage requirements of your virtual machines. But now with this new solution, now we are putting both pieces together. On the left-hand side, I'm seeing my VMware Cloud on AWS. Certain number of physical hosts will be added. Let's say I will only use 2 or 3 hosts. Mahmoud, but 2 or 3 hosts will have certain CPU that I need, certain RAM that I need, but the storage is not enough. Where can I get my extra storage for the host to be used as my data store? Where is the extra data store capacity is coming from? The FSx ONTAP. FSx ONTAP allows you to mount your volumes that you create an FSx ONTAP directly to the E6i host to appear like a data store. We could not have done that before this feature. We could not have iSCSI mount from VMC to anything in AWS before. Now we can because of the ONTAP operating system, the ONTAP features that's built within this NetApp feature. So I can mount the FSx ONTAP via iSCSI to the ESXi to appear as extra data store. Of course, I can have iSCSI, or I can have SMB, or I can have NFS to any of the virtual machines running in my cluster. But to have iSCSI mount to the ESXi as data store, that was not something that was available before. Meaning, I can get all of my extra capacity directly from FSx ONTAP. And just to show you how effective this is, I'm going to share with you a couple of pricing examples that we have seen. On the left-hand side, you would see a customer who is trying to build for 1 petabyte project. Want to migrate to cloud. They see value from using VMware on AWS. However, if they do this as that and without actually start investing, they would see they will be paying too much compared to using FSx ONTAP. So I'm seeing here total saving of $15,000 between using ONTAP versus not using ONTAP. Another realistic example that we have is a customer with 150 virtual machines. Storage is around 45 terabytes. Now, if you go to the calculator of VMware and try to do VMware again on AWS, the system will tell you you need 5 i3 hosts. And this is the expected cost for 3 years to accommodate for this requirement. Not because you need all the CPU of the 5 hosts or the RAM, but you need the storage of these 5 hosts. So storage, it gives you 53 terabytes, which is just enough to take care of the requirement of 45. But with FSx ONTAP in the equation now, I don't need to get 5. I only need 3 to cover the CPU and RAM, and I can get the extra storage from FSx ONTAP mounted by iSCSI, bringing the total solution, 3 hosts plus FSx ONTAP, to a much lower number, saving around 31% for 3 years. This is the true value of using FSx ONTAP. Whether you are already a NetApp customer or not, you could definitely use that to migrate your VMware Cloud, your VMware workloads to VMware Cloud today, and reduce your cost by integrating FSx ONTAP and use all the storage from there. Does that make sense? Please let me know in the chat. I know there are many questions here. We'll go through this in the Q&A section. Please put all the questions here on the chat. Now, with that being said, I think it's definitely better now to see this in a live demo for us to see how would that look like in reality. So let me take you to the AWS console to see how that looks like before handing it over to my colleague Bala. So if I just go to the console here, as you can see, if I just need to go to FSx, remember this is a regional service. So always confirm which region you wish to operate in. So here I'm just using North Virginia for this demo. Once I click on FSx, I can always say, create a new file system. And you can see all the usual flavors, but for now I will choose the ONTAP feature. And this is multi-easy, as we discussed, integrated with Active Directory. You have hot and cold storage tiers. I can also configure deduplication and compression to help me reduce the cost of running on the cloud. I will click next. The wizard will ask you to use the quick wizard, which takes literally 2 fields to put. What is the name of your file system? What would you like to name it? And how much storage? That's it. 2 things and then click next. But I'm not going to do this here now. I'm just going to show you all the advanced options I can have. So here I can name my system. So I can call this AWS Arabic file system. For the SSD storage, how much SSD you want to assign. And you have the minimum here of 1 terabyte. So I will put 1 as the minimum for the SSD storage capacity. And then the system is also asking me an advanced question. How much IOPS would you like to use for this SSD? The default option is 3 IOPS for each gigabyte of storage. Now, if I don't like this equation, because now here I have almost 1 terabyte, so this will roughly give me 3,000 IOPS. If I need more than 3,000 for my 1 terabyte here of SSD, I will need to manually provision IOPS. No, 3,000 is not enough. I need, let's say 10,000, I need 20,000, right? So I am able to do that. Now, because it's built on EBS, I think on the chat, you understand the answer for this question, right? I'm seeing on the chat, because this is not S3. This is EBS in the back end, right? So once you provision that storage, it will always be there acting as your hot storage, right? You have that IOPS, and if I put user provisioned, if I put specific IOPS here, then I'm paying for this regardless of whether I'm using it or not, because this is like EBS mentality with the pricing, right? But with the capacity tier, I know in the capacity tier, I am paying for what I'm using because this is S3. I'm also paying for how many requests are you sending to that storage? How many do read and writes? Very good. For network, you control which VPC you want to launch this in. What is the security group around it? The system automatically creates a security group to allow accessing to that file system, like iSCSI, SMB, NFS, these type of things. Which subnets, what is your preferred subnet? So this is like the active system where the active controller will be running. You can control your routing. And for security, I can choose which encryption. Again, the system automatically gonna enable KMS and gonna use an encryption key 4 here. I can put an admin password for the file system. I can name the SVM for my ONTAP file system. I can join an Active Directory. I can put a name of my volume. This is very important where I'm enabling storage efficiency. So this is what will also be a huge advantage by adding this checkbox to enjoy the deduplication compression savings in your system. Also, you control how you'd like auto-tiering to run. So I can make it none to disable auto-tiering or to choose between one of these options. You also configure backup from here. So how often and how long do you want to keep backup from this FSX ONTAP? And then I click next to configure and to create this FSX. Now it takes like almost 30 minutes for this file system to be created. So I'm not gonna wait for this. I just wanted to show you one I have already created. So I can see here the system have created for me a file system. This is how much SSD have been associated. I can see the availability zone. I can see the IP addresses and the endpoints where I can connect to this iSCSI SMB or NFS. I can see what is the preferred active and standby subnets. If I go there to volumes, I can see the system creates the root volume that you will not be using. And this is the data volume that I created and start mounting on it. So this is the first part of the demo where we created few volumes on FSX ONTAP. Bala will now take us to the second part of this where we have multiple volumes created that we wish to mount to the VMware Cloud on AWS and start using them for our virtual machines. Bala, I will pass the mic to you.
Thank you, Mahmoud. It was a very nice session. So let's get into the demo part. Let me start sharing my screen. So guys, can you see my screen?
Yes, well.
Yeah. So what we are doing here is basically have a SDDC. Yeah. So we have, sorry. So we have the SDDC here, and which is basically connected to the file system that's running on the FSX using the transit gateway, which is, again, will be in the customer managed account. As you saw in Mahmoud's presentation, we have a connected VPC where the transit gateway is running. And then you also have a managed transit gateway from VMware, which is used to do the peering between these two environments. So basically, you are accessing this file share or NFS data store over these backbone of AWS networks, right there. So from a performance and latency point of view, there is a minimal overhead that you will face when you access this file share from NFS. Okay, now I'll walk you through some of the things that you've already seen. Okay, so as Mahmoud showed you, we have already created a file system here. And within the file system, we basically have 3 volumes, and they're named the data store 1, 2, and 3. And I want you to take a note of the IP addresses that we have in use. So basically, the subnet that we have in use is 10.10, 10.100, and 1.1 as the endpoint that we are using to access this service. Okay. And then we also have a transit gateway in the same account. I mean, just notice that everything is running in North Virginia. And this is the transit gateway attachment that is being used to connect this transit gateway in the VPC where we are running the FSX volumes to the transit gateway that's running inside the VMC on AWS, right? And I'm not sure if you've seen this screen, if this interface before. This is the interface of a VMware Cloud on AWS. And this is where we actually go and create our SDDCs. I already have a SDDC created. As you can see, it's running again in North Virginia. And if I go into networking and security over here, I can see I have the Transit Connect, and it is having this routes learned from the AWS because of the peering that we have done to the transit gateway. So both the 10.100 and the 1.1 network are available over here for us, right? And this is a single host SDDC. We can have different sizes for the SDDC. We can have one with 2 nodes, 3 nodes, and it's very easy to create an SDDC here. As Mahmoud was saying, all you need to do is select the region, the number of hosts, the type of host, give it a name, connect it to the AWS account, and then choose the subnets, configure the management network, and then click on acknowledge and accept. And it just takes roughly 2 hours for us to spin up a new SDDC. So what would take weeks and months on-prem to run is just taking a couple of hours to do on the cloud. And once this is running, it's just business as usual. And for customers who already are using VMware on-prem, they will be presented with a vCenter interface very similar to this. And this is a no-brainer because this is exactly how the vCenter on-prem works. So what we have here is basically data stores that we have added to that. So you saw these volumes on the FSX, which is basically the data store 1, 2, and 3. And this is the same data stores we have mounted on this host via the connect of the transit gateway. So the default storage for VMC is vSAN. And this is where all the data is stored in the beginning before you add the ONTAP data stores onto the SDDC. Now, I have a few test VMs over here, and I want to show you first how easy it is to move a VM that's basically running from the vSAN storage to the NFS storage on ONTAP. Now, if you look at the details of this VM, you can see that it's running on the workload data store. The workload data store is basically a vSAN data store. As you can see, the type is vSAN. And we will move this to one of these data stores, which is ONTAP, let's say ONTAP DS1, which is an NFS data store. So for customers, again, who are familiar with VMware, this is as simple as right-click and say migrate. And since we don't want to move the compute or the memory, we only want to move the storage, we just say change storage only, click on next. And since we want to move from the workload data store to the ONTAP one, we choose the ONTAP, and then we make sure it goes as data store default so that the storage policy it matches with what's available on the ONTAP data store. We click on next, and then we click on finish, and you can see that this in a few minutes would move from the vSAN data store to the FSX data store on ONTAP. And the advantage for the customer then is that, as Mahmoud was saying, if they are running out of disk space on the SDDC, this is a very good way for them to keep moving these workloads out, as this will save them a lot of money, because it's very expensive to add a new host, just for the point of view of storage, where you really don't need the compute and the memory. So this was how we could move workloads from vSAN data store to NFS data store. It has another unique use case. So this is for any customer that has NetApp on-prem. They basically can replicate the volumes that they have on-prem to FSX ONTAP. And once it is added here, we can mount those volumes as NFS data store, as I have done here. This one was replicated from on-prem. And if I go to files, I can see that I have migrated one machine from on-prem. And all I need to do is click on the .vmx file and say register VM. And then choose a place to move it, in the sense, or run it, because you need to now attach it to the cluster or the host on which you want to run it, right? And as soon as I do that, I can see that it will show up in my inventory here. And I can then say power on. And it will just come up just the way it would in an on-prem environment. Okay, so it's as simple as that. So this was the two parts of the demo that I wanted to show you. I hope this was informative, and if you have any questions, please feel free to ask me or Mahmoud, and we are happy to take this.